thank you for coming. And thanks, Dennis. Well, I don't think it's a kind of hard detective work to understand. My accent is not Boston.
You listen, you'll hear it.
Okay, I actually came from the southern part of China, and so I don't know if I bring any accent from there, because when I grew up, we didn't speak English. So, but anyway, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I would like to thank Dennis for giving me this good opportunity to talk about some of the stuff I've been doing. And so tonight, the topic will be a title is kind of strange. It's called Modeling Iron Cycle and Prime Productivity in the Antarctic Peninsula, Drake Passage, and Scotia Sea. And you probably realize that there's a lot of jargon in there. So I'm going to try to explain it later. But first thing I'd like to tell you where this area we're looking at. So this is the Antarctic. Okay, this is what you call Southern Ocean. And this is the part of the work I've been doing. Okay. So first, I'd like to give you a brief idea of what I'm going to talk about. So first thing I'm going to talk about is called the phytoplankton. It's a small, tiny algae growing in the surface ocean. And there's thousands of species of them. And they do photosynthesis. And they grow, and then they provide food for, shrimp, fish, and bigger animals. So they are very important, and they are just like a land, plant on land. They do photosynthesis. Okay, so that's why they are important. And another thing I want to talk about is called iron, and you recognize this is a rock, and but in the ocean we have iron. It's very little, but then it's come from this kind of rock. But one thing that's important in terms of iron is that it's one of the nutrients phytoplankton will need, because just like plants on land, they need nutrients. We have all kinds of nutrients. We have the nitrate, phosphate, we have silicate, and we also have iron. So phytoplankton also need iron. Okay. And the really important thing I actually want to talk about is called carbon. Okay, you may recognize that this is the diamond. If you organize carbon in a very special way, you get diamond. It's very rare, it's very expensive, but it's not what I'm going to talk about today. We're talking about this. This is called fossil fuel. Okay, so this is actually coal. So why I want to talk about carbon? Because carbon is very important in terms of for us to understand global warming and climate change. Okay, so and then why we go back to the phytoplankton or iron? Because this is the guy who is playing the important role in terms of the carbon cycle in the world ocean, and this is the guy is limiting the phytoplankton growth. So that's limiting the phytoplankton to take up more carbon. Okay, so that's all right. So if you want to look at a global carbon cycle, so first probably this is one of the most important figures you want to look at. So since late 1950, scientists started to measure CO2 carbon in the atmosphere at a location in Hawaii. It's a very nice location. It's 3,000 meters above the sea level. And so when they measure it up, they continue to measure it for like 50 years. So one thing you can recognize right away is that the CO2 in the atmosphere is keep going up, okay? And you probably also realize there's some kind of up and down. This is the so-called seasonal cycle, but then the whole chain continues going up. And then there's some consequence on that. So one thing is that the temperature in the atmosphere is also go up. Okay, so this is the figure showing a much longer record. But before you might want to concentrate on this area. This is when all is industrialized, huge development. And since then, we can see that the temperature also go up almost continuously. And of course, since 2000, it seemed like level up a little bit. And there's a lot of the scientific debate and questioning into that. But anyway, before that, you can see it's a very clear change. And so now the scientific community, general consensus is that this is mostly because of the CO2 going up. Okay. All right, so both temperature going up is something we need to worry about, but just CO2 going up itself, that's another problem, and it's a pretty big problem. We call the ocean acidification. Okay, so when we look at the ocean CO2, and if it go up, what will happen? So we call the pH. So that's the acidity of the ocean water will go up, and the pH will go down. Okay, so that also has very serious consequence. That means we call calcium carbonate solubility will go up as well. So this is important. This is a kind of chemical form for the calcium carbonate. But you can easily relate to real things like, for example, like shellfish, the shell, or like a coral. So most of the hard material is made of the calcium carbonate. So if this solubility going up, that will means they'll have a hard time to grow. Okay, and you probably see more oyster coral bleach, or you can see more oyster die off. So that it's called ocean acidification. It's a very important issue. Scientists are trying to figure out. Okay, so if we put this warming and the ocean acidification together, we'll have some kind of, we can look at the future, see what it may look like. Okay, so we assume this is the current situation. And then we go to the right, we have a warmer temperature. We have fresher, because when you have temperature go up, the sea ice will melt. Okay, so that will mean you have more fresh water in the ocean. Okay, and then in the ocean we have more CO2 that become more acidic. All right. So now if you look at assume this is the water column, then first thing you'll notice you have more CO2 from atmosphere going to the ocean. The second thing that because the ocean temperature warm up at surface first, and the deep water will catch up slowly, that will build we call stratification, stronger stratification. So that will mean this line we call thermocline will go up. So this area will become shallower. So this is the important area. This is where phytoplankton can grow. So that will mean they will grow in a shallower layer. And at the same time, because the warming will have the more stronger storm. We may not have more storm in general, but we might have more stronger storm. Okay. On the other hand, because the air will become drier, and now we'll have more dust. Remember, ocean become fresher, but air will become drier. And there's one more thing here. This is called the carbonate solubility. This is the line we call the lysocline. This is the line largely determine where shellfish can grow. Okay, so if you go deeper than this area, because solubility, calcium carbonate solubility becomes too strong, and they will have a hard time to grow. Okay, so now usually we'll find more, say coral or fish or shellfish above this level. Now, if we increase the ocean CO2, this line will go up. Okay, so now that will have some problem as well, because you probably heard we have a lot of deep coral in the Florida Strait and in the Gulf of Mexico. And this coral live at about the 400 to 800 meter depth. So right above this line. Okay, so if this line go up, so some of the species will either move to the shallower area or die off. Okay, so this is the kind of scenario we might see in the future if we go business as usual. All right, so that's why we want to understand the global carbon cycle. So this is the complicated diagram trying to give you a big picture how global carbon cycle work at the moment. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the detail, but I want to draw your attention to this line. Okay, this arrow represents the flux between the box, okay? So this few lines represent the flux between the atmosphere and the ocean, okay? And the black line means the flux before industrial development. And the red arrow means what we have been adding to the background. So you can say this is more like a natural flux, and this is anthropogenic flux. The key take-home message in here is that if you look at these two flux, that is where fossil fuel burning and deforestation, so we so-called anthropogenic flux, from land to the atmosphere. The total, you can say, 1.6 plus 6.4. That's about 8 gigaton carbon per year. And now, if you took this line, the net is really more important. So we have ocean is absorbing about 2 gigaton carbon per year. So it's about a quarter of the total flux that go into the atmosphere. So that means the ocean is a very important player in terms of global carbon cycle. So what's the fate of this flux when they go into the ocean? So that'll be next slide. So we're looking at this two mechanisms, or two flux. One we call biological pump, okay, and the second one we call solubility pump. These are the two key mechanisms when you how to take this flux from surface go to the deep water, okay. So the first one, the biological pump, we have phytoplankton. Again, phytoplankton is very important. We do photosynthesis, and then so they will go through all the kind of food chain. Okay, some of them, get die and then get remineralized and get back to the atmosphere. So that doesn't help a lot. But some of them, they actually sink down, go to the deep ocean. So that's good. And it's even smaller part actually can get buried at the sea floor. So that will take this part will take much longer to actually get back to the surface ocean again. So this is small, but it's very important. Okay. So this is working like a pump. So suck CO2 from the air to all the way to the ocean, to the deep ocean. The second component is the solubility pump. In fact, it's much more complicated than this, but this diagram is a kind of simplified way to tell you what's happening in general. So to put it simple, when you have CO2 in the atmosphere, they can be dissolved in the ocean when the ocean water is relatively cool. And then you have this we call the deep convection. That can go down to 4,000 meters to the deep ocean. So that will bring the CO2 to the very deep water and then go through the bottom water circulation. So it will take a long time for this kind of CO2 to actually get back to the surface again. Okay. So today I'm going to mostly talk about it biological pump. Okay, that really is the phytoplankton process. Okay, so because the biological process is playing so important role in the global carbon cycle, then we'll definitely hope phytoplankton can grow better than what we see today. And this is one of the maps can show you the global how global phytoplankton grow. Okay, and before we have satellite, scientists will need to go out to collect water sample, and then take it back, put those samples under the microscope and count the number, and then convert the number into biomass. So it's a very tedious work, and it's a lot of work, and also it's very inefficient because the ocean is so big, and you can really collect sample everywhere. And with satellite, those things are very different. Now, this is the satellite image, okay? And how do we do that? There's something we call the fluorescence we can measure from satellite. So because the phytoplankton, when they do photosynthesis, they absorb light, okay? After that, they can actually also emit part of the light into the water. So through this, satellite can detect their fluorescence, which can be converted into called chlorophyll. There are different type of chlorophyll. So in general, when you refer to chlorophyll, you can say it's chlorophyll A, and which is generally representing the biomass of phytoplankton. Okay, so from this map, you can immediately realize that in the surface ocean, and most of the prey, we don't have whole lot of phytoplankton because you see that the biomass is pretty low, okay? But we have high phytoplankton in high latitude water in equatorial Pacific or equatorial Atlantic, and we also have relatively high phytoplankton in the Southern Ocean. But in general, they are low, and the reason why is that, so we want to know. All right, because phytoplankton will require nutrients, so first thing we want to look at is nutrient. And we look at that. This is the surface map of the nitrate, okay, one of the key nutrients. But we can see immediately most of the prey, indeed, surface nitrate is pretty low. But in the Southern Ocean, we have very high nitrate, and they stay there almost like forever. So the reason why is that why phytoplankton cannot take advantage of this kind of high nitrate, and because we don't have whole lot of iron, okay? So for iron, it's a different story because we don't have whole lot of data. For nitrate, we have a lot. For chlorophyll, now we have a lot, but we don't have whole lot data for iron because it's so low, it's very difficult to measure. So scientists try very hard in the 60s and 70s, they try to measure them. In the end, they have to discard those data because those data are contaminated. And because the water, iron in the water is so low, and whatever contamination you may have, you totally distort the data, okay? But since 1990s, so scientists invent some better method to measure them. So now this is one of the, for example, this is one of the transit for the iron. This is in the, I think it's in the Pacific Ocean. So this is from Tasmania. If you run a ship from Tasmania to Antarctic, and you can measure this iron down to 4,000 meters from north to south, okay? One thing you can immediately recognize, there's quite a bit iron at deep water, but there's almost zero iron at surface. Okay, it's so low. So how do we compare this with nitrate? Okay, if you look at the surface nitrate, it's more than 10,000 times than iron. Okay, so this is not a very fair comparison, okay, because phytoplankton live at surface water. They're used to this kind of low iron environment, so they adapted to it. So they don't really need whole raw iron, okay? But even if we take that into account, surface iron is still too low, okay? How do we know that? Okay, scientists can do experiment. We take a bucket of water, and then we put in the lab, and we do two experiments. One, we add iron. Second one, we just leave it that way, okay? Now we can measure the growth for a few days, and from this one, we can immediately see that the one without adding iron is not doing very well, but the one with iron is very happy. So that means iron is important for their growth, and in this case, it's really limiting the phytoplankton growth, okay? So we can look at a lot more things. One thing is that we're looking at is so-called ice core, okay? This is the ice core we can drill from the Antarctica, okay? So one thing about the ice core is that once they form, they get buried deep below, and all its condition, we call parameter, nutrients, iron's concentration, they will stay almost the same for like a million years. So scientists can, drill and get a core, and then use isotope method to really measure the condition in those time. So this is one of the famous figure in the scientific community. So, but you probably having difficult time to really to check out the two lines here. So I redraw it so that way you can see better. So there are two lines. One line is showing the CO2 in the atmosphere. The second line is iron in those ice core. You can see that when you have high CO2, in general, you have very low iron. That means when you have low, in other way, you have low iron, so that really limits phytoplankton growth. So that limits the phytoplankton capability to take out CO2 from the atmosphere. That's why you see high CO2. Okay, we are living in this area. We have very low iron, but we have relatively high CO2. So this level is still before we have all this industry, before we have all this car going on. Okay, now we are at 400 something over here. Okay, so now, all its data and evidence suggests that iron is very important in terms of the global carbon cycle. Okay, so this would lead to one of the probably most famous hypothesis in the oceans science. That's called the iron hypothesis. Okay, so that said, iron is very critical in terms of CO2 cycle. In other words, this is a guy called John Martin. He said, he actually said this word, give me half a tanker of iron, and I'll give you the next ice age. So that means if you dump all the iron in the ocean, they will take out the atmosphere CO2, and then temperature will go down. All right. So then the next question naturally you ask, so where are iron in the surface ocean from? Okay, so they from, naturally they're from land, right? But then if I want to go into detail, the one thing you might want to say is that iron in land, it won't go very far, say, go through the water, because iron is famously easily to be bound to particle. So once they are bound to particle, they will sink down very fast. So that way they really won't go very far. But it's one efficient way to go is that goes through the dust. Okay, if you have a dust storm from, say, from Africa, so the storm will go over the ocean, and then the dust will sink down. They will deposit as ocean surface. And some of them will dissolve, so become a dissolved iron, which can be used for phytoplankton. Okay, but this is one of the mean map of the dust flux, we call flux, and you can immediately recognize. So say North Atlantic, we have more dust, but we don't have a whole lot of dust in the Pacific Ocean. And how about Southern Ocean? It's very low as well because it's far away from land. Okay. The second source, it's important source, we call hydrothermal flux. In fact, it's from volcano. Okay, you probably heard a story of volcano eruption from Iceland, from Philippines, those places. And when they erupt, those ash coming into the air will bring a lot of iron. But most of the volcano in the world ocean is buried deep in the deep water. And most of them is below like more than 1,000 meters deeper. So it's very difficult for that kind of flux actually coming into the surface. All right. Then we also have this iceberg. If you go to Antarctica or Arctic, you'll see a lot of this kind of iceberg. When they melt, they also bring some iron to the water. Okay. So these are the three sources. And there's one more source I didn't show, is that we call sediment. Okay, so if you look at the ocean, this is kind of diagram. You know, ocean, we have continental shelf, we have shelf slope, and we have ocean deep floor. Okay, so shelf sediment can have a lot of iron. So when they get mixed up to the surface water, they can be transported to offshore. That will supply a lot of iron. So someone had done some calculation, and from this number, you can easily see that iceberg, the flux is pretty low, and dust not much either. Volcano, yeah, that's quite significant, but again, they are too deep before they can come up to be used. And on the other hand, shelf sediment flux is very high. I would say this estimate is a bit on the higher end, but you get a sense. Sediment flux is a very important source for iron. All right, so then why do we want to study Southern Ocean? As you may recall, Southern Ocean, we have a lot of nitrate and other nutrients, but we still don't have coal or iron. So that means that they have a lot of potential to grow. And on the other hand, if you talk about Southern Ocean or Antarctica, first thing people come into mind is not iron or carbon. They come into mind is the sea ice, all its animal and penguin, and this is the krill, something like shrimp, but a little bit smaller than shrimp. And this is one of the aggregate. And of course, you can see the scientists working in Antarctica. All right, so that means let's say in the Southern Ocean, we are looking at phytoplankton not only for the carbon cycle study itself, it's also important for all its animal and organism down there. There's a huge ecosystem. And okay, so when we talk about Southern Ocean, so this is the area we are going to look at. I didn't say what the image is, but now you realize that this is the surface chlorophyll. This is the average for a few years, and you can see that some area have very high, relatively high chlorophyll, and some area we call blue water, there's not much chlorophyll at all. And in the Southern Ocean, there's one thing that is really important. It's we call Antarctic circumpolar current. Okay, this is a very strong current, and this is the only current in the world ocean that does not map the land. Okay, because in Antarctica we don't have a land. Okay, it's circumpolar, so it can keep going and going. Okay, how strong is this current? You probably heard of Gulf Stream. Okay, this current is stronger than Gulf Stream. If you think about the volume, it's like 100 million cubic meters per second. And how big is that? You combine entire world river, the volume is about 1 million cubic meter per second. So this is the current is 100 times bigger than that. Okay, so it's a huge system. And one thing you notice that this current, there are several branches of them. This is the one of the branch, the southernmost branch. You can see that the branch, this current almost like circling this high chlorophyll area. And another thing you want to look at is look at the quill distribution. You realize that it also has this kind of pattern. So where you have high chlorophyll, the quill will like to go there. Okay, and then I want to remind you this is the area we are going to spend a little bit more time on. So you can see that there's a strong contrast here between the so-called blue water and this is the high chlorophyll area. All right, now we want to zoom into this area. And this, again, this is the chlorophyll. This is average over like 8 years for the October. This is the ultra spring. Okay, so basically you look at that, you can recognize it's a very strong pattern here. You have this high chlorophyll in this area and high chlorophyll in this area, and also high chlorophyll in this area. So we have some hypothesis going on. So why they have high chlorophyll in this area? This is, we assume, it's iron coming from the shell. And this area, we assume iron coming from dust. And this is we call island wake. So current going through here, and so when they meet this island, it will stir up the water and they bring up a lot of nutrient, including iron, from the shelf sediment. So this is, in fact, it's a similar mechanism from what we are looking at here. All right, so before I go into more detail, I'd like to give you a brief summary of the geographic information here. So this is South America, and this is the area we call Drake Passage. Okay, it's a very dynamic area. And this area we call Scotia Sea. And down here we have Weddell Sea. This is the area you'll find a lot of sea ice. Okay, so now again I will come back to why this is you have high chlorophyll bloom, and we are looking at the area is here. Okay. So this is a chain of islands called South Shetland Island. There's another island go here we call Elephant Island. You'll see it clearer in later figures. So this is Antarctic Peninsula. So you want to try to remember this that we call key hypothesis. So let's say it's iron is coming from here and then get transported downstream and fueled by the boom down there. All right, if we look a little bit closer, now we have something like this. So this is the blue water, and this is the Antarctic Peninsula. This is South Shetland Island. So this is Elephant Island. So you don't have to go into all the detail, But one thing you might want to look at is the circulation pattern here. So we have a delta current coming that way. Some of them go into this so-called Brandfield Strait, and this is called Brandfield Strait current. And this is part of the Antarctic circumpolar current. So some of them go, once they go through here, some of them go on the shelf, and when they turn around, they bring a lot of iron with them. So basically, if you stand back, you realize this is like a converging area. You have iron coming from shell and then go to there. Okay, so we have this kind of so-called refined hypothesis. This is what scientists do all the time. You come up with a hypothesis, and then you try to understand if that's correct or not. So this hypothesis said this is Antarctic circumpolar current interact with the shell, and then leading to the off-shell transport of iron-rich shell water, and which actually drive the phytoplankton bloom downstream. Okay. All right. So now, because I have been walking through so much kind of big topic, and so I want to summarize a little bit why we want to study this area. So first, we know we have atmosphere CO2 that is increasing, and then that has some consequence in terms of global warming and ocean acidification, among other things. And the third, about biological production in the ocean, that means phytoplankton growth, is one of the key components in terms of the removing atmosphere CO2. However, the production is limited by iron. And in the Southern Ocean, we have the huge nutrient pool, but they are no use because we have very low iron, and because the low dust deposition in the Southern Ocean, and we are hoping to see if there's iron from the sediment. And this is the Antarctic Peninsula shell is one of the potential area from all the evidence. Okay, so now come to my research. So in order to understand the whole process, we come up with a few research questions. So first question is natural. So is Antarctic Peninsula shell an iron source to the Southern Drake Passage and Scotia Sea? The second question, if yes, then what are the iron transport pathway? We want to know how they get into the water, how they get transported downstream. And the third question is called sediment flux, and how much is the flux? We want to estimate that because we want to quantify how important that is. Okay, the last one is, so we want to know with all its importance, in fact, how important it is in terms of phytoplankton bloom in Southern Scotia Sea. All right, so when we do research, we'll try to find out what kind of best method to use. So in this case, I'm talking about two methods. One, you recognize this called observation. You take a ship out, you bring some simple instrument or very complicated instrument and with you, and then you can do all kind of measurement. And the second way is called modeling. Okay, you have a computer. Some of you probably recognize it, and it was in the 1970s. So now we have, of course, much more advanced computer we call cluster or supercomputer. So we can do a lot more work. We did 2 cruises, in fact, trying to measure a lot of things. So I listed here. So this is happening in 2004, the summer, actual summer. So we spend quite a bit of time here, and we see all the data stations, and we measure a number of things. So you may want to look at this circulation pattern again. So why we want to go here, this is Elephant Island again. So this is the area we want to see high iron because the shelf water coming to this area. All right. And then the second one is happening in winter. So why we want to go there in winter? Because in winter we have very strong convection. Okay, so when you have this strong convection, the surface water will go down to the bottom water will go up to surface. So there's a lot of mixing that will bring the sediment sediment go all this high nutrient water at the bottom to surface. So we did several transects here, here, and here. In fact, we also go into without sea. We try to go there, and then we have to turn back because there's a lot of sea ice over there. All right, so the measurements are similar. If you go look at it, there's a number of things we measure. Okay, so the other method I use is called modeling. So what is numerical modeling? So it's complicated, but I try to give you a simple idea what it is. So first, you recognize you have this kind of equation. And then what you want to do, you convert it into a called numerical model. Okay, so this is the numerical equation. But that's still not enough. You have to convert it into computer code. So that way computer can recognize it. Now you can bang on the computer. Okay, you bang it up and then you just try to get something out of it. And then in the end, you always feel like frustrated. Why it's not doing anything. Okay, so, but numerical model is a very powerful tool. I think it can do a lot of things. Here I give you a few examples I've been working on. So this is the Massachusetts Bay. You can model circulation or eddies in there. And you can also look at this is called red tide. It's basically, it's kind of harmful algae bloom in this area. And you can also model, this is the Southern Ocean. And then you can really look at the chlorophyll in this area as well. And you can also do some idealized simulation. This is the island wake. And you can put a kind of the cylinder in the ocean, kind of idealized ocean, and then you can run model. You can see all kind of eddy behind it. And this kind of eddy usually are related to phytoplankton bloom as well. So if you come back to the coastal estuary, you can see this kind of freshwater plume, and you have the tidal current go back and forth. And you can also model coastal flooding. All right, so now come back to what I've been doing for this area. And this is a lot of detail about it. We call physical model, and it's really for the circulation. You don't have to go through all the detail. But one thing I like to tell you is that when you do a kind of ocean model, you choose the area. So this is the area we choose. And then you want to split this area into so-called model grid. Okay, you probably won't be able to see all this small grid in here. But if I look at zoom in one area, you probably see better. You can see all kind of small grid. So now within each grid, you have all these parameter, we call parameters, say temperature, salinity. Within each grid, you have one number, and you put all these grid together and go through the equation. You can calculate the change of this parameter over time and space. So that will give you the solution. Okay. So there's how many grid we have in this case? And here we have kind of 1 million grid, right? So we divide it horizontally and vertically. So in the end, we got 1 million grid. So the grid size actually change with the location. So you have the best area we call resolution. We have 2 kilometers, and the cost area we actually one grid dimension is called 20 kilometers. So it's a huge grid. So now I realize that numerical model is very idealized. But depending on air problem you're looking at, if you look at, say, Indian River Lagoon, you can have much better resolution. Typically, we can have a grid size like 10 meter or 20 meter. All right, so that's physical model. What about biological model? Biological model is a little bit more difficult, but I can try to simplify that, say, okay, so you put nutrient as one variable, so we call N. And phytoplankton, if we put all kind of phytoplankton together as one group, we call it P. And we put zooplankton together called Z. And this is we call a simple MPZ model. So they interact each other, and phytoplankton can sink to the bottom. But you can also have much more complicated biological model. Yeah, so in this case, we have the 3 types of nutrient. We have the silica, we have nitrogen. Actually, we have 2 types of nitrogen. One is ammonia and nitrate. And then we also have iron. And we have 2 types of phytoplankton, smaller one than diatom, generally the bigger. And we have zooplankton, 2 zooplankton. And we also have bacteria. We can have organic matter. So put all this together, it'll become a pretty complicated model. But you want to understand this is still highly simplified, because just within diatom we know at least 2 dominant species. If you look at more carefully, there's much more species. And smaller phytoplankton, you have thousands of species. Okay, so but we just have 1 variable. But anyway, you get an idea how we can put all it together, and we can run the model. And so first thing, after you run the model, you want to do model calibration, and then you go on to model validation. Okay, what that means is that you use the model output to compare with the data. So this is one of the comparison of surface current. This is model surface current. Color is temperature, and this is the surface current from the so-called drifter data. Basically, you have some kind of flow at ocean surface. Let it go for a long time. You report their position back, and then you can calculate the current. All right, and the color here is kinetic energy. But you don't have to look at the detail again, but you get a sense. In general, this kind of pattern look pretty similar. And you can have another comparison. This is the surface iron. This is from the 2004 field measurement. And you can see this is Elephant Island, and we see there's some high iron concentration in this area, go up to the deep water. And this is the model output. Model cover much bigger area, of course, and we also see this kind of tongue going out. And if we do a correlation, regression, sometimes you do this kind of statistical analysis. So you want to make sure it's correlate better. So it's not too bad, but it's not as good as you want. All right, and then you also try to compare surface chlorophyll. And this is the model output. This is one of the satellite output that happened at the same time. So you can see we generally capture the pattern here, but we apparently missed this part. Probably we don't have enough dust in the model. So something like that. So we can make, we have made a number of comparisons, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. So now to come to, once you make a lot of comparison, you feel like model is in some way representing the real world. So you want to come back to say, okay, what they tell us? Okay, so this actually is from our measurement. One of the winter measurement, you can see all the kind of transit of the irons. You can see iron in this area is very high offshore. Iron is very low. And if you look at the circulation pattern, they transport all the iron to this area and then go offshore, go to downstream. Okay. So indeed, this sharp iron is one of the important source. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a movie animation. This is the one of the animation we use some kind of one thing called tracer. Okay, passive tracer. So the good thing about numerical modeling is that you can do all kind of experiment with your computer. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money to go out collect water sample, or you don't have to really putting a lot of things in the water, so that way, probably there's some unknown consequence. In computer, you can just keep running the model again and again. So this is one of the case. What I did is that you release some tracer from the sediment, okay? And in the beginning, in the water column, there's no such tracer at all. It's 0 concentration. And then you can see that tracer coming from sediment and then come up to the surface. So this is surface, and you can see initially come from here, and then you have a tracer coming from here, and then they all merge to this area. And when the current go down, they bring this tracer downstream, and they spread. So, and they can way downstream, can go way downstream. This is to South Georgia. So one thing I like to remind you is that this is the large scale, and so when they go down, they get diluted. So the concentration getting much lower than Okay, so that means even if you have a lot of iron coming out from here, iron concentration in this area is actually pretty low. So there's other process to keep this iron working. Okay. So now if you take a few snapshots, you can see this kind of pattern. So that actually can tell you a lot of information about how iron get from the sediment transported to surface and then get transported to downstream. Okay. So now another question we have been trying to ask is that how much iron get supplied from sediment to the surface. So this is one way we want to look at it. We want to calculate its volume transport by currents first. And then if we put current transport and the iron concentration together, we can get a flux, the material flux, okay? So without going into the detail, we can just basically, we can estimate, say, this is the strong jet here going toward the Elephant Island. And this is southern Antarctic circumpolar current, the southern boundary of the Antarctic circumpolar current going through this way. So it's really goes through here and then turn back to the old deep water. And there's also this called Antarctic slope current going this way to also transport irons to this area. And there's another iron mostly bypass this area. Okay, so if we put all this together, we can try to calculate how much flux going up, okay, from here. So, but you see that all it, if you stand back, you see all the current converge in this area. So there's a lot of strong interaction in this area. So it's not easy to actually calculate the flux just based on this current. So what you can do is that you draw a box, okay? You know how much going in, right? And then you know how much they actually have to go out. So that's what we did. So if we took all this box together, we can calculate all this kind of flux, and then we'll come up with the idea how much is actually going out. All right, so if you look at the top 500 meter, the flux is something like this. And this will give you a journal, if you convert mole to gram, you give you this number. So as a comparison, you look at it, how much the flux from the volcano in the entire Southern Ocean is about 20 times 10 up 9 gram. So it's about 20 times of this. So you think about it, then we will realize this flux is very significant because this volcano flux include all the entire Southern Ocean. So, and another way you can compare it is that if you calculate all of the productivity in the Southern Ocean, and then you can estimate how much this kind of flux can support productivity. It's about the 3 to 10%. So just for this kind of small area. So that means that this is a very significant flux. So, and in the model, you can also really run the model and to tell how important this is to the phytoplankton bloom. So this is one of the maps for the winter surface iron. You can see high iron in this area, they get transported, and then they get diffused. But if you come to the summer, you can see a lot of bloom in this area, and that they're all connected to this Antarctic Peninsula. So that means iron from the shelf sediment, in fact, actually have a strong impact on the phytoplankton bloom in this area. So of course, we can go into a lot more detail trying to estimate this contribution. But let's give you the general sense. All right, so put all it together, we can summarize our work. And first thing, of course, this is the background information. So iron is a very important component in terms of global carbon cycle. And from my work is that we can realize that shelf sediment in this peninsula is an important source to our study area. And then there is a complicated pathway for this kind of iron to go from sediment to the bigger open water. And this transport actually have a strong impact on the phytoplankton bloom downstream. Okay. Finally, I want to recognize the financial support from funding agency and the contribution of my collaborators. In fact, they are the guy who did all the field work. And also I want to acknowledge the model development team. It's called RUMS. It's a community model. And when we run the model, we have to use a lot of data. Okay, thank you.